The other big deal is this, guys, that we are living 50% longer than any other generation has been before us. If you were, say it was the year 1900 in America, the average age a male would live to is 51. A woman was 54, and if you're a person of color, you would be lucky to see 40.
Yeah.
So we have not been here before.
Yeah. Wow.
So to go to your dreaming thing, for me, the book is a provocation for reimagining or dreaming what might it look like to walk forward for the next few decades, because somehow we can safely say around 50, I'll be around for another couple decades. We don't know for sure, but on the whole and on the average, there's a great chance we will be.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not 1900 anymore. 125 years later, here we are. We've never been here before, and what would it look like to intentionally be eldering in the same way many of us have been parenting? Because I want to continue to do that.
David Tensen is with us.
Yeah.
And Derek Turner is with us as well.
Hey, everybody.
Ooh, Derek.
Good to be back. Yeah, I had to be here for David.
Come on.
I had to.
You're on the calendar, so you get to see when we're scheduling. And he reached out to me. He's like, bro, I can do that. It's at night. It's 7 o'clock here. I think 9 a.m. the next day where you are.
Yeah, we're ahead of you.
That's
Yep.
right. And I've been wanting to, man, the last time you were on the podcast was literally almost 6 years ago. And it was something that we had just started, man. COVID was happening. It's been a minute.
How were we going to support our ministries and be heard? Podcasting.
I did say that during COVID, it was the right time to launch because I got all of a sudden easy access to all these guys who talk for a living and were suddenly stuck at home and had lots to say.
And no conferences to go to.
And no conferences to go to. So.
Yeah.
And all courses and books to sell.
Right.
That's true. It's funny because it's true. Noam was like, I'm sorry, I've started another landscaping business. I can't talk. They're like, I'm writing a book. The Lord's told me to start a course. Okay, that's great.
Which is a great way to introduce you, man, because you've got a book.
I do have a book coming up, yes.
We're going to dive in, but man, I was, and it's incredible. Derek and I have been talking through it, and I'm actually really excited to dive into it with you. But man, I was in Australia, and I got to hang out with some of your friends. Didn't quite make it up to you, but Gary Grant, I got to connect with.
Good close friend. Yeah.
Yeah, and in fact, you're doing stuff with Gary, and he was just on the podcast.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
He's amazing, and in fact, he's coming to. I believe he's going to come. You should come with him. We've got the tacos
it just doesn't work out logistically, but otherwise, I would. I just.
Oh, you already know about it.
Yeah, because he asked me. He's like, "Let's go." I said, "I can't logistically go this year."
Well, I'll say this: if and when you make it, we will officially give you the moniker of Poet Laureate of Rethinking God with Tacos, because David's a poet.
Yeah, that's right.
A legit poet, and I think that's what drew me to David in the beginning was his poetry, and I love the way you bring words alive, and it speaks to my heart.
Yeah, that's how we met. That's how we connected, and continue to follow your work and all the things that you have been focused on. Man, share a little bit for those who maybe haven't gone back to season 1, a little bit about who you are and what you're doing right now.
Yeah. So, I think we met because I was publishing poetry. I'd spent a couple decades in ministry, different positions, ministry and small business and non-for-profit. And went through a compassion fatigue kind of breakdown, and as part of dealing with that and trying to externalize everything I'd been through and seen through, and Derek, we had this common sort of ministry experience in a healing and all those kind of things, if I recall, right? So I was working with Elijah House. I'd trained in a lot of modalities, and then had started a ministry and was away a third of the year ministering, mainly to church leaders. And so, hit the wall, praise the Lord, had a breakdown, and then started writing poetry as a way out. And it just happened that Paul Young, actually Gary Grant had Paul Young over in Melbourne, and it was either 2018 or 2019, and he heard me read a poem, and then, he really helped and encouraged me to say, no, this is really good, and then started reading my poetry everywhere. So that sort of started this journey and this relationship with not just poetry, but in publishing and self-publishing, helping other people write and publish their poetry too. I launched Poetry Chapel, which I ran for a couple of years, teaching and training people how to self-publish poetry, and we put 3 Poetry Chapel collections together. I had 2 of my own books, and then I dabbled and put a kids book together last year, but I've always had this other thing on my heart, which has sort of coincided with some seasons that I'm in now in life and in vocation, etc., that I have just kind of been arrested by what is next in this next season in my life. Yeah. So where I am now, and that's the topic of eldership or elderhood, which I know you've talked with some previous guests about. Jason, I can't remember his name, but you guys talked about, I'm in this age, the kids are going older, I'm thinking about the next few decades in life. Yeah. So right now, a typical week looks like for me, I work part-time as an aged care or residential care nursing home chaplain 2 days a week. Yeah. So we provide spiritual care to 120 residents. The average time somebody's with you is 22 months is the average age people are in care before they die. Wow. And so I've just spent the last 18 months in this very different space, companioning, walking with people who are in the sunset years of their life. They're high needs people with disabilities of sorts, whether that be cognitive dementia or physical ailments of all different faiths and backgrounds. I work with a wonderful Lutheran organisation here in Australia that have quite a number of aged care facilities that they manage, and they put chaplains in them. They fund chaplains in there. I have a fantastic colleague I work with too. I get to bring my dog to work sometimes for the residents, which they love. That's a whole lovely sort of story, as well. But being exposed to people who are at the end of their life and everything they go through, and seeing them 30, 40 deaths a year, being part of that world's different. It's exposing. So that's grounded me. And the other 3 days a week, I work and study at a local university here on the Sunshine Coast. So I'm doing my doctorate. I'm about halfway through that, around social learning and small business education. And then I lecture in the creative industries. At the moment, I'm lecturing or tutoring on creative entrepreneurship to some first-year students. So that's kind of my life. Been married 27 years, got 3 kids who turned 21, 17, and 15 this year, and I turned 47 this year. There we go. We have some similarities, I think, which I'd like to hear.
Yes, we're tracking. We were talking just before we headed up to have a conversation with you that we're probably empty nesters my wife and I next year, as we start to our kids are adulting, and so this shift in seasons. Man, let's talk about decenter everything. I mean, I want to start. I've shared the story before, and you probably know it. But years ago, I was at Bible college. I preached, and it was one heck of a preach, man. I got everybody engaged, told a lot of stories. But my scripture verse was that young men dream dreams and old men have visions, which is backwards. But I didn't know it, and I preached one heck of a message about how young men dream dreams. And when I was done, I of course got corrected by every Bible student there. Went and looked it up and thought, that doesn't make any sense, and put it on a shelf. I didn't know what to do with it for 10 years, 12 years, 15 years. I'd pull it off the shelf. It didn't make any sense. As a young man, I had all these dreams. It seemed like I was, but about 12 years ago, I was out for a run, and I heard my father just out of the blue ask me, he said, "Hey, Jason," and it was in the middle of a death season in some areas, and he said, "Hey, Jason, you know why old men dream dreams?" And I chuckled because, that had been a back and forth between us since I got it wrong in Bible college. I said, "No, why do old men dream dreams?" He said, "Because they know what it cost." He said they had vision and they chased it to its end and they died. And then they dreamed again, but when they dreamed again, they dreamed generationally. And when they dreamed again, they knew the cost of the dream, and they had the scars to prove it. And, and in that moment, he began to speak to me. I want to call you to old men dreaming, the kind of dreaming that, as I was reading this, I was feeling like you were putting together the manual for that word he gave me 12 years ago. The difference between, and he also said old men isn't about age. It's about revelation. It's about maturing.
Soul capacity.
It's soul capacity. What you use is the word soul capacity. So maybe give us the synopsis, and then I've got quotes, and Derek, I've got quotes.
I'm still right now at the stage where I'm like, I'm going through my draft here and scribbling everything out.
And you shared that with us, so I'm so grateful you did.
Yeah. You have the rough version.
Yeah,
so
I think you called it. This is not. I forget how you said it. This is not done yet. This is not my manifesto.
This is not baked. No, this is half a baked potato. But anyway, I'm glad you got something out of it.
100%.
Maybe to bounce off what you said, I have got something that really impacted me, and I think both of you may know, and if I'm trying to remember back if we talked about this last time, Derek, was the life model and the work by Dr. Jim Wilder and Curry and a whole lot of people at Life Model Works. And this is something I would teach and walk people through because it was a great developmental model of a person's maturity. You mentioned maturity there, Jason, and that you in this model, which is kind of this neurotheological maturity, multi-generational maturity model, where they say from 0 to 3, here are the tasks you should have completed. In infant stage, childhood 3 to 13, here's your job. You look after yourself. So your first job is to be loved. Then your job is to look after you, learn to love and take care of yourself. And then you go into adult stage, which is 13 to the time you have your first child, which is where you learn to look after yourself and a significant other. And there's maturity tasks for you in that stage and community in that stage. And then you go into parenting stage for maybe a couple of decades until your youngest turns 13, 14.
And survival stage.
Yeah. And then you go to elder stage. And so I remember teaching this like a decade ago, and my youngest was 6, and I'm like, in 7 years from now, I can't really start thinking about what it means to care for a community, because that's what an elder does. They should have the capacity to care for a community because they've learned to build that up. They learn to be loved, care for themselves, care for another, care for a family, and then a community. Now, in ministry life, of course, you could be 23-year-old, a pastor, and you've got community care, which I'd always argued was problematic. That how am I expecting this 33-year-old father of 4 to care for an entire community? Yeah, it's just by himself without the use of, oh no, I have elders. We've appointed, Mary over there and John over there, and she's well known. She's a nurse and he's a policeman, and blah blah blah. We're not talking about the office of an elder. We're talking about the maturity stage of an elder. So that has always been in the back of my head. And you said you're empty nesters. you're coming up to that age and stage of your life.
Yeah.
Here in Australia, my daughter's at a local university, the same one I work at, so she hasn't left home, and things are becoming terribly expensive, which is another part of this, the cost of living and the size of our population. But I just began to wonder, like, okay, I've been witnessing the generations before me get to this stage, the kids leave home, and it was like, on the whole, or what was at least esteemed in this culture in the West, is the kids are gone, you can have all your time and money back. Adventure before dementia. Get out there, have a good time, stay fit, stay healthy. It's all about you again. You've done the hard yards. Hopefully you might volunteer here and there. Use your superannuation or your 401k, or, have got all these ducks in a row and eggs in the basket and whatever metaphor, and then it's an endless summer, You've turned 50 or 55. It's summertime till you've carked it and you can't walk anymore, and then you can have visits from the chaplain while you're in diapers. I mean, I'm putting it raw, but much of this is there. And so we have then witnessed, and I was like looking, I'm like, where are these elders that Tim Wilder and other people talked about? And hear me out here. Any developmental framework, I don't care whether you use Bill Plotkin's, whether you use Erik Erikson's, whether you use Carl Jung's, whether you use Robert Keegan's, whether you use Jane Harding Collins, whether you use Sharon Blackie's, anybody that has put together a maturity of psycho, spiritual, emotional framework of development, all say adults today in our older generation are stuck in late adolescence.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's where the majority of the world lives.
Wow.
That's where all our boomer parents and builder parents, most of them got stuck in that.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. I feel
it. And you could say, well, that's crap. Like, get it together, guys. I asked, because I am a research student as well, is why?
Why, yeah.
How did we get here?
Yeah.
So in the book, in the opening chapters, there's a get out of jail free pass, but I'm trying to point out that we had 2 world wars where our fathers, our grandfathers, our uncles, and the men in our life went off to war, and those that were able to come back came back traumatized. The women stayed home. They just had to survive. There was no time for maturity, development, reflection. It was survival, and if they remarried or the husband had come home, they were usually war-torn, PTSD, men. And but then the industrial age came, so consumerism comes in, and if I can be more by having more. And what a wonderful distraction that was over the next few decades, the industrial age. And you and I are now walking on the shoulders and enjoying a world that these people built. So
yeah.
But it wasn't. It was about having more. Having more meant being more. Success meant these particular things. And of course, there are outliers, both of this.
Sure.
There's this is just on the whole. We started to institutionalize our aged people, put them in, what I quote in the book is aged ghettos. We didn't invite most of them to live back with us, particularly in countries that have provision like we do in Australia. The pension or the taxes will pay for the care of these aging people who can't be at home or are without care. Technology has changed things. The economy changed things. So you really have this perfect storm that we have walked into where we might have been really intentional, which I know both of you have and a lot of your listeners have been really intentional on the way that we've parented. Like my parenting has been intentional. And I can see the fruits of the Spirit and our work and blessing and hand of God. And the work that Natalie and I committed to personally that is reflected in our kids.
Right.
They're not perfect, but they're good and kind kids, and they're not my words.
Yeah.
And it's never a guarantee that if you do all those things, your kids end up like that. But we know how probability works, and so that's where they are.
Yeah.
But what happens after parenting? I'm like, I have sacrificially parented for 2 decades, died to myself again and again. John Sanford from Elijah House used to joke, he said, God knows we're too lazy to die with ourselves, so he puts you with a perfect enemy called your partner, and then he gives you children, which are just sin with skin on, to test you for the next few decades, so you die to yourself. And so you enjoy the fruit of that. You actually do. I think you tick the maturity boxes and you walk through that. Not to say that I don't have a long way to go, because I do. But also our generation, you and I, we've been really blessed by the amount of information and knowledge available to us on parenting. Right. You had Tara Boothby on, and she talked about attachment and love sciences. All that research is only a few decades old, and our parents didn't have that accessible. So the other big deal is this, guys, that we are living 50% longer than any other generation has been before us. If you were, say it was the year 1900 in America, the average age a male would live to is 51. A woman was 54, and if you're a person of color, you would be lucky to see 40.
Yeah.
So we have not been here before.
Yeah. Wow.
So to go to your dreaming thing, for me, the book is a provocation for reimagining or dreaming what might it look like to walk forward for the next few decades, because somehow we can safely say around 50, I'll be around for another couple decades. We don't know for sure, but on the whole and on the average, there's a great chance we will be.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not 1900 anymore. 125 years later, here we are. We've never been here before, and what would it look like to intentionally be eldering in the same way many of us have been parenting? Because I want to continue to do that.
Can I ask?
Yeah, go for it.
Can I ask, while we're still, because you've just done a really brilliant job of laying out the introduction of the book and where we find ourselves right now, and the fact that we've never been here before. You also are a theologian, and very much navigating this issue, or this moment we're in, through the lens of union. And you're describing. So maybe is there some insight into theologically what has compounded maybe some of these issues where we find ourselves right now? You talked about a 25-year-old pastor, and I could see some of that even being the fruit of what you've just shared, the nature of where we're at. And
but what are you thinking? I mean, you know what I wrote in the book, but what do you guys think?
I can quote you if you'd like.
Would All
that
right.
help?
That might help. Yeah.
Well, I know that. Let me see if I can.
I guess one thing that just strikes me in this whole beginning summary that you've brought so well, and I think it's going to give people a taste at what they're going to read ultimately. Which, by the way, I have to go back to something real quick, and that is get a hold of David's poetry and read some of his early poetry. If you want to get a vibe for this heart and this soul and this guy. I remember reading a poem about miscarriage, and I wept at the way that you wrote a poem about a woman's miscarriage. And, my wife and I had been through one. She'd been through a miscarriage, and just the way that you captured that and brought, openness and healing around it. It's beautiful. So go back and read David's poetry. But
the new book does have a whole lot of new poetry in it as well. By the way, I've weaved that in.
I'm sure. And
thank you.
I love it. I love
That's
all of it.
Kind.
But, I think let me start by maybe saying some of the issues that I've had personally with elder experiences that have actually set me back horribly. And it came through my desire to serve and be in the church and to love God and love people and to, do things for God, which I think our audience is pretty motivated by.
Yeah.
But it's also,
We grew up in the West. We do
it's
stuff.
also kind of brought us into a place of where we're at now with deconstructing a lot of that. I had an opportunity to go to my spiritual leader, elder at the time, shortly after my first wife was killed by a drunk driver. And it was his niece that I was married to. And he just said, Derek, you just got beat at the game of life. And I embraced that. I made an inner vow. I'm never getting beat at the game of life. I took that as a word from God. Okay, don't get beat at the game of life ever again. And what I realized now is that set me back emotionally, and where intimacy was concerned, to just keep everybody at arm's length, to push everybody away, because I'm never going to feel that again. I don't want to feel that hurt again. I look back now and it's like, I think the right elder move would have been, hey, just give him a hug. The guy, he just needs a hug. Come close to him, right? So I think this is what I'm reading in your book, is that we don't want to destroy the individuality or the uniqueness or the diversity of every person. However, we do want to bring a oneness to the humanity that we're a part of, and we need elders to be there at the tops of their mountains leading the way. I don't need to climb that same mountain, but I need some of that.
As a young person, you don't need.
And I would,
I
would say, you saying that the generations that have, as a whole, are still adolescents. That's what you were.
Yeah. That's not my.
Arrested development.
I can cite others, but it is very common in development. They use the term arrested development, which isn't just a funny TV show. It's a truth.
A great
that
TV show.
One of my favorites.
Yes, but it resonates with my experience. It provides grace now at 51. But I look at my entire experience with leadership within the church, and this is where I start to think, oh my goodness, there was nobody that knew how to think generationally. They didn't know what to do with anyone who was feeling led to participate, other than to control or use. And then there's also the theological reasons behind that we get into all the time. But I just find it interesting, I don't want to get too far ahead, but you have eventually you get into decentering God, where you take us fully. I can quote you, or you can jump in. There's been a lot said here, so.
Yeah, just tell me what I said. Not that I don't remember, but there's a lot in
this
the book.
is whatever I think of God as just that, a thought. And if I place that construct of God in the center of my life, it will rob me of being able to see God in another way, which is very much resonating with what we do on the podcast, but also very much resonating with what you've just said as far as our limitations for understanding what it means to think generationally, what it looks like to mature in love. The thing you're describing is other-centered, self-giving love. That's that's maturing that you talk about when you're parenting. That's what I've learned. But
I might even say that it's non-centered, others focused.
Yes, others focused. Love that.
Yeah.
And you can speak to that, but that is to me the maturing journey that we're looking for in everyone, regardless of age.
Yes.
But that anyway, I'll let you speak to that, because I'll get left turn on heroes here in a second.
Thank you. I can bounce off both of those. So thank you. I called the book "Decenter Everything" because I think that is, and the sort of the catchphrase is the Soulmaker's Guide to Authentic Eldering at Any Age. Understand that what we're talking about here is it's inner work. It's soul making. We're not asking how many push-ups you can do and protein you need to eat at 65, or how much more or less a woman needs during menopause. That's not the nature of this book. This is an inner work book. Decentering is a term that can be used across sort of different theories, and it basically, like it's been used in feminism, for example, to decenter men out of particular texts. You could decenter colonization. You decenter things, and by that, what we mean is oftentimes we speak or live or think through things by centering something, having a central thought or framework when we approach something. And I think the call to eldering as a verb, not just elder noun, I'm the elder of my church, or I'm an older person. I think Richard Rohr said we've got a lot of olders, but not that many elders.
Yeah, wow.
That we are, the end goal is that we live with such a wide and fat-souled capacity to hold many opinions, thoughts, tensions inside.
Come on.
And the only way we're able to do that is by anything that grabs our attention and wants to center itself in the center of our life will always hinder and stifle our ability to gaze lovingly, thoughtfully, and considerably across anything else. So there's a couple of pictures that I paint, and the word that I use in the book that I've created is decentric eldering. So decentric is a combination of decentering, pushing anything that's central outside to the edge of the circle, and eccentric means that there is no shared single focus. So the eccentric part comes from some work that Richard Beck did. He wrote, can't remember the book, psychologist, very great stuff. And he said, if you want to live a peculiar life that we're called to as Christians, you have to live an eccentric personality, an eccentric identity where you're not in the center, but God is.
Wow.
Does that make sense? Which is
Yes.
great, you know. You don't get to be peculiar and your own self while you're in the middle, and your identity, who I am, what I like, what I want, how I want to think, are central. He argues, put God in the center, and you then have an eccentric personality. Your center is different. God's at the center. I am challenging that by saying that
Right.
at the center of God is nothing. So we're all Trinitarians here. We understand perichoresis, the circle dance, the divine dance, the 3-in-1. And one of the things I'm suggesting for discussion in the book is that there is nothing in the center of the Trinity.
Hey guys, so we have a conference coming up. It's our second annual family reunion in Charlotte, North Carolina, my backyard. And last year was so sweet. I'm really looking forward to this year, September 25 through 27. Baxter Kruger is going to be with us. So thankful for him. Damon Thompson is going to be with us. That's been a new friendship, and I'm incredibly grateful for him. It's going to be a time, guys. Dub Alexander will be with us again. Love Dub and all that he brings. Brooke Waters, whom you guys know and who helps put this conference on, she'll be with us. And Mark and Julie Appleyard, good friends of mine, dear friends of mine. They've been on the podcast. They're going to be with us, along with Michael and Bethany Wallace, who led worship last year. It was unbelievable, and it's going to be good this year. I'm really looking forward to this. September 25 through 27. You can learn more about it at afamilystory.org, afamilystory.org. We have the early bird tickets right now, so if you sign up now, it'd be the most cost effective. It also lets us know how to prepare for you. Guys, there will be fellowship, there will be worship, there will be deep end conversations and teaching around this Trinitarian faith, this beautiful gospel, this good news that only gets better, and the opportunity to connect again as a community. I'm so grateful for you all, so grateful for the ways in which we get to continue to discover and explore the goodness of God together. And I'm excited about the opportunity to do it face to face, September 25th through 27th, afamilystory.org. Come hang out with us. Oh, by the way, I'll be there too. All right, I'm going to get back to the podcast.
So I have been in church services where somebody's got the revelation, God is 3 in 1. God is a circle dance. God is a perichoresis. And God sings and dances over you. Gets 3 people up from the audience, hold hands in a circle, dance around, and then the preacher says, now, folks, where are you in this picture? Jason, why don't you come up from the stage here and stand in the middle, and the Trinity will dance around you. It's just ignorance, I think, but it's also anthropocentric and egocentric. By anthropocentric, it means that we have centered humanity. Yeah. We've put humanity at the center of the circle. But Scripture says in John 3:16, God so loved the cosmos, not the people in it, but the entire cosmos, right? Yeah. The whole world, all creation. So I'm arguing that there's nothing in the center of God, and it doesn't matter what, if you look at the Celtic Trinitarian knot or any image of God as a tripart entity, there's always nothing in the middle of those pictures. Why is this important? So I painted this little picture, illustration, that a good friend asks you out for dinner. It's one of your favorite restaurants. You agree, you turn up at the lobby, the music's playing. You see them there, they give you a warm hug. Hey, how you doing? Doing great. Usher invites you over to your table. It's a great table in the corner. The lighting's perfect, the music's perfect. There's a beautiful bouquet of flowers in the middle of the table, and you're ready for a good night, and you sit down and smell the flowers. Wow, this is really amazing. And you lean forward and you go to move the vase out of the way because I can't see your face. Right?
Yeah.
And you go to move the vase and it doesn't move. It's fixed at the center of the table. And your partner looks at you and tries the same, like, what's going on here? Waiter, excuse me. Why is this fixed? This thing is centered in this table and I can't see. How am I going to connect with my friend? Oh, we have other tables where the vase is decentered. If you want to, you can go there and I'll move it. Of course I want that one.
Right.
As much as the flower is beautiful, as much as God is beautiful, eventually there's 2 things I think we're invited to do. Number 1, be in union in Christ, and Christ is not at the center of the Trinity. Christ is part of it. So we don't live in the center of that.
Wow.
And I think that in the Trinity, there's nothing in the center because it allows for, number 1, a loving and compassionate gaze to be in the circle. The Father can see both face. Each of them can see each other's face. That's number 1. And second, as you alluded to, is that self-emptying, self-giving, kenotic relationship hand to hand that I am able to enter into and receive. That the source of supply is in one hand, but I'm emptying and giving of myself into the other. So I think the invitation in eldering is that we decenter God because, and some people say, but God has to be central and most important. And I would argue that as you mature and move to authentic, mature, decentric eldering, you realize that things don't need to be in the middle to be valuable and important.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a very, you've just undermined the hierarchical structures that we tend, the things that we, that the way that you say, oh, you build on this, you build on that. Yeah. I had a friend, and I don't know, you can tell me if I'm getting it, years ago, and it was an epiphany for me. He was bemoaning the fact, he'd called me up on my back deck, and he was bemoaning the fact that he didn't think he could die for God as a martyr. And he, for some reason, seemed to think that I would, because out of his mouth he said, yeah, I know you would. And I coughed on my, choked on my coffee and said, no, man, I'm on my back deck in my sweatpants and a T-shirt. It's a beautiful day. I said, I there's no grace for that. But beyond that, I think you've asked the wrong question. Take up your cross and follow me was never about dying for him. It was always about the other. Mm-hmm. And it suddenly takes it out of, I don't know if I'm catching the spirit of what you're saying, but that the idea that the cosmos, that we're invited into this dance that is not hierarchical or demanding some form of payment or some form of, I don't know if that makes sense.
Definitely. I think knowing what you're explaining here and what many of your guests explain, that there is no coercion, control, or dominance in the Trinity, is the thing that we're invited into, and I would say slowly over a lifetime, to really be part of. And you can't have a life that demonstrates those things if there are things in the center of that, including...
That's so good.
In the book, I talk about decentering death. I talk about decentering being heard. I talk about decentering consumerism, decentering knowledge. So very quickly, being heard. Whenever I talk about the life model, or you talk about it, you'd hear people, I'd get older people in the congregations, 70-year-old John puts his hand up. Kids today, they're always on their phone, and I have all this wisdom to share, and nobody wants to hear me. They don't, I'm elder, and they don't want to hear an elder's wisdom. They're more interested in what's on YouTube. Well, yeah. Okay, what am I hearing there? That you are still the hero of this story, and you still want to share the journey. This is about you, John.
Yeah.
You've missed it. You're still 22, talking about what you did on the weekend.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the Uncle Rico syndrome.
What's that?
From Napoleon Dynamite, the uncle that could have won the state championship, throw the football over the mountains.
Exactly. And you know what is terribly sad and is in aged care, you see these people who are in the last stage of their life, and they talk like you go to visit them, and our job is to listen. Our job is to companion. But it is a noticeable difference to anybody that works in chaplaincy or with people towards end of life, is those that have reconciled and be comfortable with the way life is and are, and then those that are still desperately to cling on to when they were younger. And those who are of the kind of more positive, and there's this entire body of research around gerotranscendence, which is this sort of cosmic transcendent state that we can enter into, but only 20% of the Western population enters into in their older age, of deep reflection and gratitude. You know when you meet people like that, because you'll go and knock on their door, how are you going there? And good, thanks. And how are you? And how's your family? That actually have just been so... They're okay. They're okay with not being okay. And they are interested in you. They're interested in listening. Yeah. And then they talk.
Yeah.
I see this decentering even in the life of Jesus, himself decentering God. When early on he was asked about the greatest commandment, and love God, love people, love Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, love your neighbor as yourself, became the answer that he gave. But eventually he backed off on that, and he came around to this statement of, okay, here's a new commandment. Love one another the way I have loved you. Self-sacrificing, self-giving, no ego death love that puts others ahead of self. He dropped the God part, and Paul did it later too. He said, when I ask people, how do you love God? And the key answer almost all the time is obedience, obey. And what are you obeying? Well, what about the command of Jesus to love one another the way I have loved you? And Paul even said it when he went on and said, and John said it, we show our love for God by our love for one another. So I kind of feel like, this is the thing I'm getting out of your decentering statements in this book, is when I can get out of the way and truly give myself, even there's a prayer that I pray every day. I want to read this to you real quick. For those of you who don't know, I'm a part of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm obviously not anonymous about it, but I've grown so much in this environment.
AA is fantastic. The 12 steps are phenomenal.
Yeah, phenomenal. Richard Rohr is a huge fan. I could go on for days, but this prayer says, God, today help me set aside everything I think I know about you.
Yes.
everything I think I know about myself, everything I think
Yes.
I know about others, and everything I think I know about my own recovery, so that I may have an open mind and experience a new experience with all these
Yes.
things. Help me see the truth.
The best.
And
Absolutely.
yeah, I feel like that's the ultimate eldership, is getting to that place of kenosis, pouring yourself out for others. And it's got to be something that is authentic and real, and comes from this place of, not just experience, but it's almost necessity. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that
That's a
if you're going to have a
wonderful
life well
decentering prayer.
lived, it's going to be
Yeah.
necessity to really kill off the ego, and learn to live a life spent in giving towards others. It's probably the most selfish thing you can do, in a weird way of saying it, right? It's the way to experience ultimate love, is by loving others well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if God is love, then that whole Trinitarian relationship is rooted in no self-seeking, not being boastful or proud or rude,
Yeah.
not taking account of an evil done to you. Wow, that would be a good elder move right there.
Not speaking evil of others.
Yep. Yeah. Sorry, I'm kind of rambling now, but
Are you? No, that's good.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts, or I am, because I'll yes and that.
What would you say?
Well, I want to set you up with this maturing journey from. I'm going to quote you here. You talk about center stage syndrome. But then I love how you describe the hero journey, and the grace. One of the things that has been life-giving about this good news is that that I've discovered a God who is brilliant at speaking the language of our understanding, and valuing every stage of our journey and our immaturity as we mature.
Yeah.
And so you give a green light to the hero journey, in the sense that that's part of the journey. But you say perhaps the most pervasive false adaptation is what we might call center stage syndrome, the persistent need to remain the hero of every story long after the hero's journey should have given way to a more subtle form of enduring presence, which is what you were just talking about.
Yeah.
And I love you talk about the fat soul as well. I think you could maybe touch on that. I love that terminology.
Okay.
Being a wide river. But
yeah, why don't I read the poem? There's a poem I put in it, which is
that the do not long to live atop another's mountain?
no. This one is it's called Fat Soul, and so there's a theologian, Patricia Adams Farmer, who talked about fat soul, and she wrote about it based on. He's actually a process and relational theology theologian, Bernard Loomer, which I love that stuff. And so he talks about the having a soul size, a capacity to hold complexity and difference without feeling threatened.
Yeah, which is what you were talking about.
Which is beautiful. Yeah, which is a recovery step in the 12 steps that you do every day.
100%.
Yep,
100%.
and it's
In fact,
important. You have to decenter your concept of God.
Let me finish
go
that
on.
paragraph, and then I want you to speak into it, because I had this written down.
Okay.
Bernard Loomer calls soul size the capacity to hold complexity and difference without feeling threatened. Loomer defines soul size as the volume of life you can take into your being and still maintain your integrity and individuality. The intensity and variety of outlook you can entertain in the unity of your being without feeling defensive or insecure. By this measure, many of our substitutes for authentic elderhood actually represent a shrinking rather than an expansion of the soul. They maintain rigid boundaries and fixed viewpoints rather than developing, and I love this, what Loomer calls the strength of your spirit to encourage others to become freer in the development of their diversity and uniqueness.
Yeah. Thanks.
Talk about that. That's phenomenal.
Give us the
I love that.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
So
for a little bit,
then I
David.
give you this poem.
Yes.
Our souls are a river in flow, whose banks and bed are built by every interaction, whose ways and waters change with every passing breath. I want to be a wide river, not a narrow brook you simply step over and forget, but wide enough to be considered before crossing. I want to be a slow river. I want to be a slow river. Not an ocean so wild the innocent dare not enter, but slow enough that even the lame feel safe to wade in. I want to be a deep river, full of life and nourishment, moving through nations with many streams, unable to be dammed by dogma or doubt. And one day, one fine and inevitable day, we will find ourselves emptied out into the great ocean of things, adding to it our minuscule moment. But until that moment, until the moment my soul ceases to be held as this body, the kind of soul I really want to be, is a fat soul, a big, fat, and generous soul.
Yeah, love it.
Makes me tear
And
up.
what you preface that with, Derek, from the book is that's where that came from. That's what I want to be. I want to cultivate that, and I can't cultivate that while I am at the center of this story. That the hero journey needs to continue on for the rest of my life. That I need to continue to be the Batman, the Spider-Man, the Katniss, whoever it is that,
right.
we want to be the central figure of the story, so we have great stories to tell. I'm watching House of David on Amazon. I don't know if you're watching that series. And it goes through the life of David, and they portray King Saul's inability to decenter himself from that throne. And he's haunted. He's haunted, and he makes a mess of everything because he's not willing to get off the throne when he knows his time has come.
Yeah.
His
you mentioned
hero journey has stopped. You were the great warrior king. Finish up, bro.
Right.
Like, your time's come. And guys, at our age, if we take life as a number of seasons, we had our spring season, we had our summer season. We are entering into an autumn and then winter season.
Yeah.
We need to inhabit, and this is probably, I haven't said this explicitly in the book, but I'm writing this in, that we need to inhabit the time and the age that we are, the time that we live in 2025. We need to know what it looks like to live here and now, and we need to inhabit the age that we are.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing that we are not likely not going to live to 100. Oh, you never know, David. Listen, even if you live to 100, it's still halfway at 50, guys. Break your life up into 25-year cycles. You're entering into the autumn, and some listeners are entering into the winter season of life. The hero's journey has to make way. You have to be the Gandalf or the Galadriel. You need to be that wise elder or that young elder that is stepping up out of that and making room. And as you quoted from me before, it's the strength of your spirit that encourages others to become freer in the development of their own diversity and uniqueness. We are here now to shed our leaves. If we all hang on and we want to stay the hero and have an endless summer, we're going to continue to make not just a mess of society, but a mess of this planet. Environmentally, ecologically, there is a price to be paid.
Yeah.
As we do this, the Earth has gone from 2.5 billion in 1950, and it'll be nearly 10 billion people by 2050. In 25 years' time, the Earth will be 9.7 billion people is the estimate.
Mm-hmm.
We can't just keep going the way it is as hero consumers. who. So.
Well, and
Yeah.
speak. I will speak. This speaks to me in a lot of ways, in that I lived most of my formative years looking for, and you use examples of Galadriel and Yoda and the Oracle. I believe that you used the Oracle too from the
different
Matrix,
archetypes.
as those who had taken the hero's journey, and then I was looking for a Yoda. I was begging, especially within the church, somebody to father me, somebody, and all I found was adolescents, those that were protecting, and the thing that has allowed for me to grow, and I think, and I'd be curious if you could speak to this, because the only way that, if you don't have it modeled, and I did, my dad has modeled it, but we've almost had to do it on our own. We've almost had to discover the Father, and discover union, which has been why union has been so profoundly transformative for me. At 35, I had an encounter that shifted everything, and from that day forward, I stopped begging the men around me to be elders, even though you're right, we need them. I couldn't find any, and so I had to figure out how to grow and mature without too many models, to be honest. And the tenet, I actually had the thought 5 years ago, I thought, finally, I'm getting to play, and now I'm too old, but not in a negative, in a gratitude with the generational thinking that my father was giving me 12 and 15 years ago about dreaming old men dreams, about valuing how he thinks, so that I would be prepared for this. But maybe you can speak to that, because I do feel like culturally, within the church especially, but I think we get to model it, bro. There's so many lack of elders, partly because we didn't get union, and we didn't have anyone to do it. We didn't have anyone to raise us up to be the Yoda to our. There was a point in time where I was Luke and I had no Yoda. And I would have died for a Yoda. I would have killed for a Yoda, and I never had one. And I feel the ache of it when I talk to you about it, while at the same time so grateful that I met my Heavenly Father and find myself in this spot where I would like to be that for others.
Yeah, we have a divine model, a divine decentered model in perichoresis, in union, in this idea that nothing in heaven and earth anywhere can separate me from the love of God in Christ Jesus.
Come on.
And so I'm always in, but I'm not in the middle. I'm on the edge with everybody else.
Right.
No one person is more important. It's a profound circle. But to bounce off what you said, it's true, and I'm meeting more and more people in our generation that the elders were scarce. There were olders, and as you said, you looked up to somebody in their 50s and 60s, in your 30s, that's a big deal. And they were competition.
That's what it was. Yeah.
Right.
They were competition. They're like, oh, well, I'll be going for that job. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, that's what
we see this. We're seeing this economically in this housing market now. The boomer generation, and this is just an economic example, have been the wealthiest generation that has ever lived and probably ever will live on the face of this earth. The disproportionate wealth that they have enjoyed. Not to say they haven't worked hard, but you know what? It's not like our ancestors worked hard or our kids aren't working hard. My kids work freaking hard. Hours a week, and this old idea of if you work hard and study hard, you'll get ahead in life. That calculator died. That's done. The other thing, guys, I should just mention a side note, is one of the big impetuses for this book is that I think we are entering in the West into a future where multi-generational living is going to be the norm. So I'm asking myself, what sort of person do I need to be if my kids are with me for another decade or two?
Right.
Am I going to be willing to knock a career in academia, which I might get into if I, by God's grace, would I, while my career might be booming at 55, 60, and would I be willing to pull back on those hours, the time, the accolades, the validity, all my hard work, and help raise a grandchild?
Sure.
that lives
Yeah.
with us at home.
Wow.
What sort of person do I need to be?
Yeah.
Because I just can't be competition to my kids. I need to step up, and it has to become an adult-to-adult relationship. But I need to go from parent to elder.
Yeah.
I think inside, which just means making room and dying for more to myself, more to my desire for nudie runs and holidays around the house. So
I saw a thing the other day. It's just a brief little meme about, not being able to afford a home. This generation
huge.
can't afford
It's
a home,
massive.
and the boomers were like, well, we were able to buy a home and we worked hard and we gave everything and we did. And it's like, yeah, but you paid like 8 raspberries for your home.
Yes, that's right.
What the
So
hell are you
the average
talking
house
about?
in there
You
at
know?
our time, it was double the salary, and now it's 8 or 9 times. So it's just not the same age, which is why I have to say you have to inhabit the age that you're in. No use
Right.
us lamenting, well, my parents had it easier.
Right.
Well,
Right.
what have you got to work with now, and who are you
Yeah.
going to be to answer this call, and what is the invitation of God that is disguised as life itself asking you to enter into?
And here's what I'm
is it
hearing.
that God is asking you to inhabit.
Right.
I think life is the initiation into eldering, if we'll allow it. It's there.
Yeah.
It's built in. We don't.
Yeah.
We don't need big retreats out into the bush and ayahuasca things. And rites of passages are wonderful and they're great, but you're not going to be doing that with 5 billion people. Like that is not happening. So it's got to be in context to where we are today. And just to jump back quickly, Jason, what you were saying, you got to that age and you were trying to elder without elders. You're eldering. It's like trying to parent without parents. I'm parenting. I'm having to work this journey out myself. Somebody who had absent or dysfunctional parents
Sure.
goes into parenting with a love and a desire to do far better than they had experienced, is behind the 8 ball, and is having to parent without having been parented. And I think by and large, we're in this stage now to be dreaming and reimagining what it's like to elder without having had a whole lot of elders. Now, not to say they don't exist. The challenge is they're not up front.
That's the
they're
thing about
often
elders.
not wealthy and successful.
they're
They're a
hiding.
little hidden. They're in hiding. You know why?
Yeah.
Because they're freaking happy and they got it. They know how it works. They're happy.
Is that the
They're
elephant in the
content.
Yeah, that might be.
Like they're there if once you see them, once you know what you're looking for, you'll see them, and they're humble and they're content, and they're usually, kudos to us, don't have podcasts, and they're just going through whatever life calls them to do.
But here's something
It'd be more helpful if they had a podcast.
It would be.
Right.
It'd be more helpful.
But
And
here's
it would
something
be like, so what do you guys think? That's what it would be. What do you guys want to do? What are your dreams? What can I help you with? Yep. They're volunteering at sports events. They're volunteering at church. They're pouring out the communion.
right. Yeah.
They're at home
they're
looking
here.
after their grandkids.
They're
They're
here.
around.
And I did
Yeah.
find a few along the way, but it was very rarely the guy that was behind the pulpit.
They didn't have a limp
Yeah,
or any scars.
Yeah, it was
all up and to the right.
and that was that's why theologically there's some things that I'm curious about that we've touched on here.
But don't you think there's a silver lining here? And I think part of that is the disgust that we're experiencing at age 57, age 51. David, age
47.
47.
That's right.
And that is the lack of quality elders that we couldn't access in our years when we needed them. Is it possible that knowing what not to do could be just as valuable? Because now we say, I am going to be what I needed. I'm going to become what I needed. And that might be that gift of desperation.
Right.
To quote an AA term for God, gift of desperation,
Right.
might be the catalyst for the eldering that you're talking about.
I think it can be. Here's the thing. If we center not being like someone else, we've centered something, and it's a fuel. Right? So this is why forgiveness and repentance are important. I should be able to become like that if that's the way I'm to go. But this is the difficulty with identity formation is that if we make identity a formation around what I'm not, we often don't know what we are.
Right.
So there is a tension there that you'll never escape. You'll never escape, I think, until you finish off. But you'll begin to think less of yourself.
Yeah. But knowing what not to do can be pretty helpful.
There's wisdom in that.
Well, knowing is half the battle.
Mm-hmm.
I have heard that.
The more you know.
Yeah. But we got to speak about the elephant in the room.
Yeah, the one over David's right shoulder. Please show us.
For
the
people
origami
listening on the
elephant.
podcast, I do have I've got an origami elephant which I folded months ago, and it just
I love
lives
that that's the only thing on your shelf. It's been central to our conversation today.
I'm at a sort of a pitch-in office here, so I leave these little origami things around.
Share a little bit about what you're doing with Gary Grant.
Yeah, thanks. So Gary Grant, who was on your show a few weeks ago, is a good friend. We ministered together and known each other for quite a while, and we wanted to, I guess, in some way, sort of in the we wanted to create a space for learning that was collective and more circular and less sage on the stage and more guide on the side. And so we created Collective Wisdom Academy. We run 3-week monthly catch-ups, gatherings where somebody that is know things about stuff, knowledge expert, will come and facilitate some discussion. But some of my study and research is around adult education and social learning, and we're not kids anymore, so you don't need someone up the front telling you, here's how to write an A, here's how to spell cat. We're adults with experience. So we go from pedagogy to something called andragogy, and we learn from each other. So we just have topical 3-weekly monthly things. So Gary's, whenever you record this, Gary's in March has finished one on imagination. Tara Boothby will do something on love science in April.
That's awesome.
Debbie Grant, Gary's wife, is going to do something in May around the ministry of animals and nature, which is profound. Is Debbie's wonderful revelation. She
does stuff with what do you call it? Equine with horses, right?
Equine therapy.
Yeah, fascinating.
Which is wonderful and fascinating work and important work, and touch a little bit on the more than human world in the book. And I call it more than human rather than other than human or non-human. It's more than human now. The pets, nature. Think of the wisdom an oak tree carries. Think of the way an oak tree doesn't count how many squirrels it's fed or who's allowed in its shade. It doesn't even have to talk to be a wise presence. Think about oceans. So all this is in nature. Yeah. And then I'll do one on poetry, and we've got other guests that are coming through. So that's the collectivewisdomacademy.com. People can participate in that and be part of those discussions. But yeah, the facilitated discussion's not. Otherwise, you might as well listen to a podcast, I reckon, if you just turn up and shut up.
Well, I like how I'm going to use this from now on, knows things about stuff.
Yeah, I like that.
It's better than subject matter expert, right? Which is also what an elder is not. An elder is not an expert.
I love that.
Yeah.
They actually are supposed to be and have decentered a sense of usefulness.
Yeah. But they can listen.
They're bridges. They're disruptors.
They're present. They're able to be present. That's, I mean, that's as you get older, you hear it. It's almost a cliche. The older I get, the less I know. But I think that is true, and if you actually are being honest.
Yeah. In the book, in Decenter Being Heard, I present the 11 tenets of companioning, which is work, sort of a model and framework that was presented for work around grief and dying, but I think it's becoming of and good for us to understand that I think it's a good model of eldering. Maybe some rules or guidance around what it means to be an elder. You don't have to be the expert. You don't have to fix people. You just
walk us through it, man.
Companions about bearing witness to struggles of others. It's not about judging, or directing struggles. It's about walking alongside. It's not about leading. It's about discovering gifts of sacred silence. It doesn't mean filling up every moment with words. It's about being still, not being frantic, in a frantic movement forward. There's this desire to be better and more interesting than our kids' screens and laptops and friends. They're after peace. They're after a settled soul who will listen contextually, not give you a back in my day story unless it's warranted and needed and adds to their journey.
That's a river I want to jump in.
Yeah, that's the piece.
Companioning.
That's the piece that intrigues me deeply, even in my own, to be at that place of peace, that you can't give away what you don't have. And so often you'll hear me on these podcasts talking about, in these last years, I'm fascinated by Jesus sleeping in the boat in the middle of a storm. I'm less fascinated by the idea that he calmed it. I think that's pretty cool. But the thing you're talking about is we want to be with people who are able to sleep in the middle of that storm because they have something. Actually,
I always think that I think that the irony in that story is, Jesus, they get upset that he's sleeping, and then some chapters later, he's upset in the Garden of Gethsemane because they're sleeping. Like the irony of it. But what does it tell you? I'm struggling. I need company. Yeah. I need friends with me. I'm afraid I can't do this on my own. I need a companion. They needed a companion in Jesus. He needed a companion in his friends and disciples in the garden.
That's beautiful.
Friends. That's what friendships and companioning. No one was in the center of that circle.
That's good, bro.
Yeah. And man, just the invitation to take a nap with Jesus in the bottom of a boat feels like a really good move. I wanted to do that.
And to be present with him in the garden. My goodness, right?
Right. Both and.
I
love it.
It's such a beautiful thing, my friend. Decentering, by the way, I'll say it again. When's it out? It's out this year, right?
I'm hoping to launch it. July 1st is sort of roughly my date that I'm doing. If people listening in Australia and this comes out before the end of May, I'm speaking at the Centre for Men's Gathering in Queensland. They can go to Centre for Men and Families in Australia. I'll be presenting a bit more on the book there and bringing advanced copies of the book there. It's not going to be a giant book. It's a provocation. It's for thought. It's for discussion. Thinking, again, I'm trying to do this collectively and within a circle, not here's the final word, but here is a word, and maybe we can continue some discussion in other books and in other ways, because I'm realizing there's nothing new about what I'm saying, but I'm saying it in a new way in our age.
Yeah. Decenter everything, the Soulmaker's Guide to Authentic Eldering at Any Age. And it'll be on Amazon when?
It'll be on Amazon, and they can go to davidtensen.com. They'll find it.
Along with your other work.
On there too. Yeah, it's full of poetry. It's full of provocations, thoughts, stuff we've talked about today. See how it goes.
David, I could listen to you talk forever, man. The authenticity with which you express yourself, I always feel, and you can probably speak to this. I feel the same way when I'm with Paul Young, but you're very present. You're very much. Paul has this saying: "Everything in my life led to this moment," and he'll say that to you while you're there, and I feel that when I'm with you. Grateful for that, man. Grateful for the road you have traveled.
With you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We got to talk tacos. You knew it was coming. You said we have. I was in Australia. I'm going to tell you, in Melbourne, I had the best coffee I think I've ever had.
That's normal.
That's what I heard, and it's not even.
And if
not
you
even
quote
arrogant.
otherwise, Melbourne people will stalk you.
I also ate.
They need to decentralize their coffee in Melbourne. What the heck? Let it go, guys.
I also had some of the best lamb, and
Did you?
in Melbourne, and
We've got a few
everything
sheep
was
here
amazing
too.
in Sydney as well. But I didn't make it up your way, and I couldn't find tacos. That was the thing I was having a hard. But you tell me.
So, insider. If you'd come to the Sunshine Coast, I would have taken you to the restaurant my two boys work in part-time as dishies, and my eldest is works in the kitchen there as well. Dishies is the dishwasher kid. So
Okay.
they work at a Tex-Mex place in
Come on.
Caloundra on the Sunshine Coast called Pablo's. There are genuine Mexican chefs there, and my boys come home smelling like tacos and grease and oil and everything else that is there, and then they often come home from a shift with big giant bowls of all kinds of food. So that is where I would take you to get a genuine Australian.
Can you describe, perhaps, for our audience,
What would be the taco you would?
a mouth-watering version of the one that you prefer?
You know what? I think we talked about this last time. I'm still plant-based, so I don't eat. I'm not a beef.
Are
I'm
your
not an
boys
animal
plant-based?
guy.
No. Okay.
So he's like
No.
a tofu
No.
taco.
I'm a tofu taco. They do something called I can't remember what it's pulled shiitake mushroom.
Okay.
So it's shiitake mushroom that is sautéed and seasoned and then cooked, and it looks exactly like pulled meat. Fable, it's called Fable. It's a brand here in Australia. It's like a
Okay.
fake. So I would have it just with out of taco with Fable.
Shredded
meat
mushroom.
Yeah.
That's a first.
Yeah, shredded shiitake mushroom.
Your shiitake.
I like it.
That's next level.
Yeah.
I would do that.
So that's where I would take you if you were here. But
Well,
you could order whatever you like.
I hope to come back. It was my first time to Australia. I was with Dub Alexander, met some amazing folks, and I hope to do it again.
It's a bit of a schlep over here. It's a bit of a trek, isn't it?
Oh my goodness, that's the only thing. Is especially I'm East Coast.
We are
U.S.
down under.
Yeah, so I got to do the whole U.S. before I even start the trip. But yeah, it was a trek.
Yeah.
But you're not going to come. But we do have the conference, our family reunion in September 25th.
Yeah, it's September. That's going to be cool. I think there's some people I know that have talked about going. So I just, with my schedule and family life and
I get
graduations,
I get it.
I've promised my daughter that we would go to Japan together to Tokyo. We were missionaries in Tokyo in 2007-8, and I took her when she was 1, and she's 21 now.
Wow.
She was 2, so we're going to go back for a
That'll be
father-daughter little trip. So that's my
Nice.
overseas allocation.
That
And
is
flights
special.
are a lot cheaper to Japan from Australia.
Yes.
So
Yes.
this
Yeah.
is part of it. But another time, I'd love to be with you. It's in September. Where is it?
It's in our neck of the Queen City, Charlotte, North Carolina.
Okay.
So
The other Queensland.
yeah, we've got a lot of Queen cities, but this is ours.
Yeah, okay. I like it.
David, thank you so much.
Yeah,
we
man.
Lovely to be with you
really
guys.
enjoy you and just treasure your heart. You're a gift, and we really appreciate taking
Thanks.
the time to be with us today.
I'll get you guys an advanced copy of the book.
Man, I'd be honored.
That's
when
a great
I get
elder
out.
move, David. Thank you.
Just decentering the books everywhere, all over the world.
Thankful for you, man.
Thanks, guys.